Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Apóstolos Mαγγηριάδης from SKAI Television, and I welcome you to the Most Powerful Women Summit. I am joined with Mrs. Raffaella Temporiti, who is the Accenture Europe Chief Human Resources Officer, and I welcome her into the digital floor of our conference, of our summit. Mrs. Temporiti, hello from Athens. I know you're in Milan, and hopefully sometimes you will join us and we'll have you here in Athens at some point. No one can predict. Thank you for being with us. Let me start this short discussion by asking you, during the last 12 months, the world has changed significantly. What do you think are the most important impacts of the global pandemic on people and especially on women?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here. It will be a pleasure one day to meet you, but in the meantime, I'm very grateful for the invitation. Very interesting question. So the first consideration that comes to my mind is that we are living a global pandemic that has made many people fearful and really worried, not only about their own health and the ones of their loved ones, but also about their job security, the financial struggles they've been into. And COVID had significantly deepened some of the inequalities that we have traditionally seen. The divide between, for instance, those whose professions allow them to work from home and those that are forced to go into a pandemic support or they've lost their jobs. So as many organizations moved to remote working models, the boundaries between work and life, work and home have sort of blurred in the meantime, and increasing the extent to which we are always on and exhausted, coupled with economic and health pressures, where lockdown are forcing governments and businesses to do and to make tough decisions that are having a real impact on people's sense of job security. So I would say that we are living an unprecedented health crisis. And although the world faced other pandemic in the past, for sure, it is the first pandemic in the digital and connected era. That's an important thing. And this makes impacts and consequences more visible. And we have to acknowledge the challenges that our societies are facing are really unprecedented. This is to make us even more responsible as leaders in the way we support our people. And last, on women, when it comes to women, there's many other minorities in reality in some societies where the role of women is still very connected to caregiving. This has been an incredible challenge, and we have seen increasing need for flexibility and for support from mental health perspective amongst other. So I think these are the main impacts that I'm seeing.
So how do we create employee experiences in a way that meets their emotional and relational needs and drives greater trust, well-being, and engagement?
So there is a sentence from Maya Angelou, who is a civil rights activist and a poetess, who said, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So our ability to make each other feel seen, feel safe, feel connected is key to meet our emotional and relational needs, especially right now. The concept is very simple, but very, very powerful. When we feel seen, we feel listened and without judgment. And when we feel safe, we are comfortable to be ourselves, to share our thoughts. Only when we feel seen and we feel safe, we can then build trust, which is a very important prerequisite and condition for a culture of equality and for a good experience. And then if we feel connected, we feel more courageous and more innovative. So this is the principle, and this is what good experiences may mean to people. And we are continuously striving to create a culture where people really feel that they belong. And of course, the crisis has also reinforced the need to build a culture of equality. Our ability as leaders to build truly diverse and truly inclusive societies and workplaces is now more than ever essential to a responsible and sustainable recovery. We're talking about sustainability. There's a sustainability that refers to experience, which we cannot forget with all the lessons that we have learned during this pandemic.
One of the effects that you mentioned on the global pandemic is the increase of inequalities. What do you refer to, and how we should act on that front?
So a culture of equality is founded on trust, as I said, and the space that we allow to our people to be at their best, to be their authentic selves. So fostering a culture of equal opportunity means valuing everybody for what they are and what they bring. Only when you feel trust and when you feel valued for what you are, then you may feel that you belong. Belonging is not about fitting in or changing who we are to be accepted. True belonging lies with us and as much as with others at the very end of the day. And our level of belonging can never be greater than our level of self-acceptance, but also the capacity that we are given by society, by an organization, by the culture we experience to be our true authentic selves. And we are talking right now in Accenture about change and there be change. The change that we talk about is also about that, is deeply rooted in the awareness that we want to transform the way we lead, the way we operate, and the way that our people and our clients are experiencing our true purpose, because that's what we lead, right? The true purpose. And it's about delivering on the promise of technology and human ingenuity. We live in the post-digital era where technology and ingenuity collaborate to bring along change. And it is the powerful combination of these two that actually brings real value and a good experience, about leading with purpose.
And why do you think is equality so required, and what is the impact on the business?
Well, what is good for people is good for business. That is what I always say. And when people feel good and they feel they can be their authentic self and they belong, they're more collaborative, they're more innovative, and their performance increases. I don't say this, there's a significant amount of research that actually shows that when people feel connected and feel that they belong, they perform in a much better way. They have to have this emotional security that allows them to be their authentic self and to give their best. And this is what you do when you create a culture of opportunity at the very end.
Mm-hmm. Raffaella, you are the head of European Human Resources in one of the largest companies in the world, with more than 500,000 employees at global level. This is a question that I commonly I constantly ask myself, to be honest. What is the future of work? What do we keep? What do we keep out of this experience during the pandemic? What do we leave out? And how could you describe, let's be optimistic here, the post-COVID work environment?
That's a very good and challenging question, I would say, one that many of us are asking ourselves. We're actually doing some research in that space as well. What I can say and share is that in the past year, a few years, even before COVID existed, we saw an increasing influence of technology, especially in two main areas that are employment and education. This is not only with companies and employers, but overall speaking in society in itself. So as a first thing, I think that this pandemic had a devastating impact on employment in some cases, and it has generated a global employment crisis in many areas. There's a report from the International Labour Organization that estimates some unprecedented global job losses, which are much bigger than the ones we have experienced even in the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. And there are some specific regions in the world where these have been harder than others. The other point that is clear is that the pandemic also accelerated transformation in the workplace. And not only in the workplace, frankly, but as we're talking about future of work, let's concentrate on that.
Raffaella, you pointed a lot of changes affecting the labor market, the way of working, and also, of course, the need for adopting new skills for the workforce. I wonder, what do you think that European countries should focus on this big shift?
Sure. There are three main global trends, I would say, which affect Europe particularly and in a very relevant way. First of all, is that the crisis has exacerbated some pre-existing labor market inequalities. The second is that the crisis has accelerated some workplace trends and will transform skills demand as we go forward. It is already transforming. And number three is that dynamic and flexible labor markets will become crucial to support a sustainable recovery. I think the Europe market has to work on new policies to support some of the main areas that we have discussed, making labor markets more dynamic, more flexible, more inclusive, upgrading skills and education for the fourth industrial revolution, which we are already living, and enabling entrepreneurship in small businesses is extremely important and relevant. We need policies that enable entrepreneurship, because it's something you don't necessarily learn in school, but it's fundamental and key in any business dimension. We have to work on work transitions and diverse forms of work. It is crucial to support the recovery, and it's also critical to accelerate labor market reform agendas. And this must be a partnership that involves all stakeholders. There are challenges for some of the European countries in sustaining momentum in labor reforms and build confidence and resilience in our labor market. This is what all the European countries should focus on as we face the post-pandemic scenario.
Raffaella, thank you very much for being with us today, and hopefully all European countries and all companies will keep the pace and somehow we'll find the perfect match between technological change and, of course, a stable working environment. Thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me. Goodbye.